The DC universe is actually kind of genius. Today we're going to be talking about the DC animated movie universe. Warner Brothers, see your meat. Does he have two heads? In case you didn't know, the DC animated movie universe is a series of about 16 animated films that was released between 2013 and the year that must not be named, 2020. And yes, I know a lot of people do not watch animated films, but they all love the MCU. And saying you watch live action superhero films but not the animated ones is like saying you drink vodka but not wine. But yeah, honestly, the DC animated movie universe is actually pretty brilliant. I mean, it has all the same pitfalls of your typical long-running film series. I'm looking at you, MCU. There are several storylines it sets up that doesn't really go anywhere. The writing and directing is not always consistent. And then because it's a long-running series, much like the MCU, there's an excessive amount of underdeveloped characters. Although this particular film series managed to avoid one of the big downfalls of long-running series, which is escalation. You know what I'm talking about? It's like how in Iron Man 1, the bald guy, whatever his name was, pretty much just wanted to take over Stark Industries, right? But now, probably the last 5 to 7 movies have all been about the end of the world of some sorts. They keep raising the stakes with every film, and at some point, the stakes can't get any higher, so we have the same stakes and everything. And I think the way the DCAMU managed to avoid this pitfall is that most of the films are team-up films, even though that is also one of the biggest pitfalls of the universe, but we will get onto that later on. The end of the world being a threat to a team of heroes is not that out there. And then in the few solo movies that they had, they didn't scale up the conflict.
Another thing that made this film series a pretty compelling watch for me is that even in their large-scale plots, they still managed to bring certain character relationships to the center of the story. The most obvious example of this was probably Constantine's City of Demons, which explored Constantine's past through his relationship with one of his childhood friends. But seeing as that is a standalone film, some examples of team-up films and the relationships they focused on are Justice League Dark, which focused on Constantine's relationship with Zatanna, Justice League Throne of Atlantis, which focused on Aquaman's relationship with his parents, and then Justice League vs. Teen Titans, which focused on Raven's relationship with her father, Trigon. The decision to center the plot on certain relationships helped to develop the characters, and it's ended up forming something like a bare bones structure for the final film, which was Apokolips War, because a lot of the relationships that were the center of the story in previous films were brought to the forefront. So in the next segment of this video, I'm just going to focus on a few of the films that stood out to me for various reasons, some good, some bad.
Getting into the films, this universe kicks off with Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox, and realistically it's more a Flash film than a Justice League film, and it is probably my second favorite DC animated film of all time. The plot of this film is basically the whole time travel shindig. Flash went back in time to save his mom from being murdered. I don't know why every superhero has a dead parent, and basically that caused some sort of Armageddon. It's time travel, you don't question the logic of that. The story was brilliantly written and paced. The tensions are pretty high. Zoom is an absolutely brilliant piece of shit in this film. It was exciting seeing very familiar characters in very unfamiliar situations. It turned out to be a pretty brilliant film. Up next was Justice League: Throne of Atlantis. I think this movie started off brilliantly. The first and second acts I loved. I don't like the way they wrap things up in the end. It felt a bit lackluster. But I loved this movie when I first watched it because of what I thought it was indicative of. So Batman got his own film obviously, but Flashpoint Paradox was a Flash focused film. Throne of Atlantis was an Aquaman focused film. So I just assumed that all the films going forward were going to focus on a specific character. But yeah, they kind of wasted the opportunity, which is par for course with long-running series. Batman Bad Blood was probably my least favorite of the films in this universe. It felt like too much in terms of story to put into one 90-minute film. There's the whole madness with Talia al Ghul and Heretic, who is a clone of the son of Batman, aged up, some weird shit like that. There's the Wayne Enterprises nonsense, there's Batwing, there's Batwoman. It's just like, chill. You can spread this out. And then the next film was The Death of Superman. If not for the Flashpoint Paradox, this would be my favorite film in this universe. Once the action starts, it's non-stop action. You feel every punch, you feel every moment of this film. And I love how instead of Doomsday being some random, he was sent by Darkseid to essentially take out the Justice League, which just makes the universe feel a bit more cohesive. Because the second film in this universe was Darkseid's first failed invasion. I think the only thing I would change about this film upon rewatching it is After Superman dies, cuts to black. We don't need to see the funeral. He's a world famous hero. We know he's going to be buried. We know he's going to be mourned. And you don't need to set up the next film in this film. That would have had a much better impact. It was a really beautiful film. It was a much better version of the, I think, 2009 film, Superman Doomsday. And then the next film was The Reign of the Supermen. In comparison to The Death of Superman, this film was a bit anticlimactic. On its own, it's probably pretty fine, but you can't follow The Death of Superman with this. It felt very mid. It's much like Bad Blood. There's a lot of competing storylines going on at the same time in the same film. I mean, it makes sense because they basically introduced 4 Superman replacements in this film, and they tried to do some development of all of them. But yeah, it sort of splits the focus of the film. In fact, at some point in the film, something happens to the Justice League, and it's like they forget about it for a good 30 minutes before anything is done about it. But yeah, like I said, decent film on its own. Probably not the best follow-up to The Death of Superman, although I'm not entirely sure how they could have done this better. And then up next is Constantine's City of Demons. And contrary to what the title of this film will have you think, this movie was very character-focused, right? It felt like a very personal Constantine story. And personally, all the demonic and occultic shit is not really up my alley. It kind of creeps me out. So the first time I watched it, I was But then it's actually a pretty interesting film. And then after that, we had Batman Hush. Batman Hush was a film that had a lot of hype around it, as among those of us nerds that actually bother to watch these things. It is based on a comic book story that has like a big twist towards the end of it. But the problem is, because the film is based on the comic book, everybody already knows the twist that is coming, right? So they sort of flipped the script with that and did something else, which I think was interesting. But because I don't read comics, I would much rather have seen what the original comic storyline was. The film wasn't bad by any means, reasonably self-contained story, although I think for a film named Batman Hush, Hush didn't get that enough focus in the film, so maybe they should have drawn it out a little bit. Honestly, I think it should have been an Elseworld story. If you don't know what an Elseworld story is, basically think of like what if. It didn't feel like it needed to be in this universe, and we've already had 3 Batman films at this point. Give it a rest, will you? And then Wonder Woman Bloodlines. So I was really excited for this film because the Wonder Woman animated film from I think 2009 is also one of my favorite animated DC films. And honestly, this film didn't quite hit for me. It was very mid. It's another film that, other than the fact that it saw Wonder Woman's costume change, it didn't really have much of an impact in this universe. I think at this point in the story, due to Warner Brothers and DC's hyper focus on Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, they didn't really know where to go. To most of us viewers, the obvious decision is to develop other characters. But because of their obsession, we got the Wonder Woman film that it didn't really seem like they were sure what they wanted to do. So they just threw a bunch of Wonder Woman villains in there and called it a day. Altogether, this is another film that could probably have been done away with in this universe. But yeah, it was what it was, right? And then the final film in this universe was Justice League Dark Apokolips War. Why not just Apokolips War? What is with you people? Anyway, Justice League Dark Apokolips War was basically the end game of this universe, and I think it was brilliantly done. I love how we tied all the different characters and stories introduced in the previous films together. Darkseid's multiple attempts at invading the Earth was the central focus of this plot. The Suicide Squad were brought back, the Teen Titans were brought in, Raven's relationship with her father, Lex Luthor, the Justice League Dark, Constantine's relationship with Zatanna, Swamp Thing, Etrigan, all the plot lines that had set up in previous films, it just brought everything together here and smashed it into one 90-minute film that doesn't stop going. It was a very interesting film. In fact, in the sense of the aftermath of the conflict of the story, this probably had more of a long-running effect than Endgame. Of course, it helped that this was the end of the universe, so they don't have other films to screw up what was done here. Because, I mean, in the MCU, what was the outcome of Avengers Endgame? Black Widow is dead, Captain America is dead, Iron Man is dead. Black Widow and Captain America have already been replaced. And Iron Man will soon be replaced. So the biggest weakness of this universe, if you ask me, is also something that sort of gave it some of its strength. Is the fact that almost every film was a team-up film. The only solo films we had were Son of Batman, Batman vs. Robin, Batman Bad Blood, Batman Hush, Wonder Woman Bloodlines, and Constantine City of Demons. So that was what, 6 films, and 4 of them were Batman films. You guys really need to get off your Batman riding. I know he's probably the best character you have, the best developed character, but that problem is not going to be solved by you constantly continuing to develop him. I mean, they started a whole other universe after this, and it's still more or less started with the Batman and Superman film. You have characters. DC has a lot of characters. So it's constantly irritating that all the series, all the animations, all the movies are always focused on the same set of characters. It's like there have been, 7 versions of Joker in the last how many years? Just relax. So yeah, that was easily the greatest weakness of this film, because stuff like Cyborg doesn't get much development over the course of the film series. Aquaman was introduced in Throne of Atlantis and he did nothing else in this universe but look cool and die. Because they were so focused on the team-up films, most of the individual characters were underdeveloped. There were some people that didn't get any development at all, like the Martian Manhunter and Hawkman. And I'm like, but how do you introduce a whole Martian Manhunter and Hawkman and do nothing with them? So I have no idea why they came to the decision to wrap up this universe. I think it was fun while it lasted, and it is much better that it is gone too soon than that it overstays its welcome. All in all, like I said, this is a pretty brilliant universe. In fact, by comparison, this is leagues better than the DC extended universe. You guys need to pick simpler names. So yeah, that's that about the DC animated movie universe. I would strongly recommend that people check this out, especially now that the MCU has been kind of made. I know a lot of people don't watch animation, but now is as good a time as any to try. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe. Let me know what your thoughts are on the DC animated movie universe and its name, if you have seen it. If you haven't seen it, let me know if you're going to check it out in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.